Welcome to today's session. We will be talking about buyer psychology and decision making process. Before we talk about this, let's highlight some of the things we have talked about before. In our last session, we talked about the definition of innovation as concerning consumer behavior. Today, like I said earlier, we will be discussing buyer psychology and decision making process as it concerns, of course, consumer behavior. The way consumers think and feel about products are influenced by situational and psychological factors. The situational factors are those that relate to the time and place of observation, which has effect on consumer current behavior. While psychological factors show how this information is interpreted and used and influences the consumer decision making process. Consumer decision Consumer decision making process involves recognizing a need, search for information about an alternative need, evaluate the information obtained, make purchases, and perform post purchase evaluation. So, as an individual becomes a consumer through learning, the consumer behavior is thus learned through a consumer's life's experience, personal characteristics, and relationships. The consumer's personality is based on his or her interaction with others in different situations. Now, what is the situational influence on consumer behavior? There are certain situations or situational factors which affect consumers either consciously or unconsciously. All right. So, when making attempts to purchase a product or a brand, these conscious or unconscious factors come to bear. These are factors which are in particular to a particular time and place of observation that may have a considerable effect on the current behavior of the consumers. Let's name some of them. Number one, physical features. Number two, social features. Number three, time. Number four, task features. Number five, current conditions. At this point, let's explain these factors. Let's start with the physical factors. Physical features, sorry, as a factor. Physical feature as a factor, they are very apparent features which include aroma, geographical location, institutional features, sound, light. These are physical features, and there are others which surround the stimuli or the stimulus object. For example, we can say maybe where the product is located. These features can be observed. The product's demand based on maybe the product is demanded based on the weather conditions, such as maybe an umbrella, a raincoat, a cardigan, coffee because the weather is cold. This kind of aroma, maybe within a restaurant, a hotel, other physical features which distinguishes a product from other products. This is one of what we call the physical features. Now, concerning social features as a factor that influences consumer buying behavior is social features. Now, let's explain what that means. There are those which provide additional description to this product or situation, such as presence of other persons. Okay, presence of other persons, their role, their characteristics, and interpersonal characteristics. Now, concerning time as a factor, this may be specified in units ranging from the time of the day to seasons of the year. This may be expressed relative to the past or future event, time since last purchase or after purchase, and time since or after payday. All these time frames are part of the time as a factor. Now, concerning task features, this includes an intent to perform certain tasks, such as select, shopping for something, obtaining information about a general or specific purchase. It may also reflect different users or buyers' role, which are anticipated by individuals. So, this task as a feature encompasses all these things we've just highlighted. What about condition as a factor, current condition? This makes up the final feature that characterizes a situation. There are monumental moods, such as situations where one is having acute anxiety. It can be a monumental mood for someone that has such a condition. Then excitement is another mood. Pleasure is another mood. And these all characterize key features that helps us to evaluate consumer buying behavior. All right, now let's go to something else. What is meant by psychological influences on consumer buying behavior? What do we mean by that? Consumers are normally predisposed to certain information apart from situational influences, which affect the way they feel and think about a product or brand. These are psychological factors which influences the consumers on how to interpret and use the information for their product decision. The two important psychological factors that will be discussed are consumer knowledge and product involvement. Now, product knowledge. This is the amount of information that consumers store in his or her memory about a particular product class, from brands, models, and how to purchase them. For example, forms of products such as instant or ground coffee, package sizes of products such as small, medium, and large. These are knowledge that you readily can get. Like consumers know the small can of milk, they know the medium, they know the big, and this is about the product knowledge which the consumer already has stored in his or her memory. And groups like group marketing and situational influences determine the initial levels of product knowledge and the changes in it. This may be in form of a consumer hearing about the product from a friend, that is group influence, see the advert about such a product from the newspaper, that is marketing influence, or the product on his or her way, he sees it on his or her way to work, that is situational influence. This initial level of product knowledge may determine how much additional information that may be sought by the consumer when deciding to make a purchase. Put all of them together, it helps the consumer decide whether he purchases such a product or not. All right. Now, a consumer may therefore need to seek for extensive knowledge when purchasing a new product for which he has little product knowledge about. Now, that leads us to the second concept we want to talk about, which is product involvement. This is the consumer's perception of the importance or personal relevance of a product or item when trying to make a purchase. There are two types, which are high involvement and low involvement product. The high involvement product requires a high degree of consumers' product knowledge, while low involvement are those products which the consumer are familiar with in terms of the use and purchase. For example, toothbrush, soap, and so on. The high involvement product encourages an extensive decision making from the consumer so as to ensure that the product purchase is just the right one they intend to purchase. All right, they need more information. All right, let's talk about consumer decision making process. What does that really mean? It has been established through several years of marketing research that there exists a five-stage model of consumer decision-making process. The model assumes that consumer chooses products they want to buy as a result of going through the decision-making process. It must be stated that in some situation, not every situation, not everyone must pass through the five stages for every purchase they make. But consumers normally begin with problem recognition, followed by information search about the product, then evaluation of the alternatives, decision or decide on the product choice, and finally make a post purchase evaluation. This model is important because it gives a complete decision making process which occurs when consumers are fully involved in the product purchase. Some scholars have said that there are three types of decision making which are recognized in terms of how complex or extensive a product is and how involved the consumer is in making the purchase of the product. And they are: one, extensive decision making; two, limited decision making; And the third one, routine decision making. Let's explain what these concepts really mean so that you can get them. Now, extensive decision making, what is it? In this situation, the consumer spends more time and effort in arriving at the purchase decision because it involves a highly complex and expensive product that is important to the consumer, and they cannot afford to make a mistake. The purchase of a car, a house, or a computer is a very good example, which may involve a consumer's considerable time because he has to inquire, he has to make effort on comparing the alternatives and deciding on the right choice to make. Marketers must provide useful information to the consumers that will highlight competitive advantage for such high involvement product, lest they make a mistake. Now, the second one is limited decision making. What does this one really mean? It, it requires more moderate but some time and effort searching for and comparing alternatives. All right. So consumers normally just go around shopping several shops and comparing a number of different brands and styles. When buying products such as shirts, shoes, electronic items for household use, marketers prefer or provide or try to provide useful, attractive advertising and install displays to make consumers be aware and buy the product. Since this particular kind of product require limited decision making. And then the last one is routine decision making. They are common, simple, inexpensive, and familiar packaged product and purchases by consumers. They often have developed brand loyalty for their product and are purchased without deliberation. This includes things like soft drinks, candy bars, sardines, corned beef, biscuits, Milos, and all that, beverages, and so on. Products need to be available in a variety of outlets at a competitive price. So, what does marketers need to do? Marketers use celebrities, uh, spokespeople, other non-product related cues to encourage purchases of low involvement product. Okay, now let's discuss the five stages in consumer decision making as we had mentioned earlier. Let's discuss the five. Now, the first one is need recognition. This is the starting point of consumer buying process. There is the recognition of unsatisfied need by the consumer, and that triggers him to want to buy something. The purchase is initiated by a problem or need, which involves the consumer decision making process. There is problem recognition when a perceived gap occurs between existing and desired consumer position. All right. There is a person's perceived reality of the present time known as the real state and the desires that reflect how a person would like to feel in the present time, which is known as the preferred state. All right. He desires something and he also has a reality of what it is at this time, which is different from what the desire really is. Now, the balance between the two states does not require anything, but when there is a discrepancy, okay, between them, a problem is created and the consumer decision process begins. Now, the gap is created by internal or external drivers. The internal drivers are basic human needs such as hunger, rest, clothing, security, and all that. Now, we also have external drivers. External drivers occur when people interact with the world. A person may be hungry, that is a real state, and want to eat, which is a preferred state. Now, this may lead to other choices such as eat at home or dine outside or eat outside. Now, so it must be noted that sometimes when the disparity in is not really sufficient to drive the person to action, they just do not respond to every gap or any of those perceived gap between the real state and the preferred state. Let's talk about number two at this point, which is alternative search. The individual, on realizing his or her need, searches for various alternative information that will enable the satisfaction of such need. The information needed for a particular purchase or purchase decision can be collected from the following source: one, internal source, group source, marketing source, public source, experimental or experiential source. All right. Now, the internal source, what does it really mean? This is done for routine and habitual purchase when individuals may make the purchase with little or no additional information such as evaluation. The group source, this concerns or this comes from communication with other people such as family, friends, neighbors, acquaintances, and so on. So you can get information, source purchasing decision, the source of your purchasing information can come from them. You can also get information from marketing source. This is a form of information which comes from advertising, salespeople, dealers, packaging, displays, and so on. Information can come from a public sources. And public sources are those from publicities such as newspaper features about product, independent ratings, and so on and so forth. Then we also have experiential source. This involves handling, examining, and perhaps trying the product out yourself while a consumer is shopping. All right, so it requires an actual shopping trip by an individual and maybe the final source to be consulted by the consumer before he makes the product purchase. Now, information obtained from all these sources are then processed for the product evaluation. An individual carries out information processing under the following steps. One, an individual is exposed to information. Two, he becomes attentive to the information. Three, understands the information. And four, retains the information. Of course, he has to use it after retention. Now, number three is alternative evaluation. The consumer, after searching for the information, analyzing and evaluate possible product choices, they move from many options to a more restricted awareness set, and from there, the final consideration set from which a decision is made. All right, so the individual evaluates the information, the alternative based on information received from internal, external source, all the various sources we just mentioned now. It has been ascertained that consumers make product choices on three perspectives, which are emotional, attitudinal, and attribute-based choices. Now, when we say emotional, what do we mean by that? Emotional choice. This is when purchases are not made for rational reasons, but based on feelings, attitude, attributes that consumers has about a product, depending on the situation he finds him or herself. For example, you go to buy something and this person selling it tell you, "Oh, you're such a handsome young man. This shirt will be good on you." What is he trying to do? He's just trying to play on your emotions. And once you feel good, you could purchase such a product. Now, we also have attitude-based choices. This is when people use beliefs and values to direct their product assessment. The consumer creates the awareness set by discarding or including product or brands using existing attitudes. Consumers judge two brands that are relatively similar by looking to existing attitudes to guide their decision. Now, attitude-based choices. This is this is the most prevalent approach to product decision, and it is based on the premise that product choices are made by comparing sets of defined attributes of the brand. The product features or benefits are considered relevant in making purchase decisions. So the brand image, the prestige that comes with it, the attitude about a product may also be important while you are evaluating, or which is part of the criteria for evaluating it. Okay, now we have purchase decision. The consumer makes actual purchase based on the result from search and evaluation. If no other factors intervene after deciding on the brand intended for purchase. All right, so the consumer has to take into consideration many decision variables before purchasing, such as product type, the brand model, the dealer selection, and the method of payments. Of course, you can make all your choices, and the method of payments become very frustrating. So that can also affect. All right. So according to some authors, the consumer is confronted with five important decisions when making final purchase. These include what, where, how much, when, and selection of payment method in respect to the purchase. The consumer may also decide to modify, postpone, or avoid to purchase based on certain perceived risk. Other factors such as store atmosphere, pleasantries around the environment, that is the pleasantness of how the consumer feels around the environment, or ease of shopping, salesperson's assistance, and so on, can also influence whether he will buy or not. Time can also be an issue. Financial circumstances can affect whether or not purchase decisions should be made or postponed per time. All right. So the perception of risk may be based on the consequence or consequences, okay, and uncertainties involved. The consumer may just see consequences from economic losses and embarrassment that may result if the product is not good, and physical harm as a result of the use of the product. So all these are put together and they are also part of that decision process. Now, the fifth is post purchase evaluation. In a situation where the individual finds that a certain response has achieved the desired goal, there is a tendency that such cue response pattern will be remembered. In other words, what we really mean by that? Now, the response is likely to be repeat purchase because his experience about purchasing such a product was good. So it could be repeat purchase. And when the cue appears together again, that is when he feels good about it again in such occasions, it can be said that there is a learning. That means the consumer has learned from his first experience, from his repeat experience, he has learned. So frequent reinforcement therefore increases the habit potential of particular response, and when the response does not satisfy the need adequately, the possibility of the response being repeated is reduced. Now let's talk about learning process as concerning consumer decision making. Learning as a concept in marketing is very important because it explains how consumers' behavior is learned, how they get information about the product and services which they purchase or not purchase, which criteria they use when assessing alternatives, and how they make purchase decisions. So scholars have said that learning is described as any change in the content or organization of long-term memory or behavior. They further gave two fundamental approaches to learning, which are conditioning and cognitive learning. Now, conditioning is creating an association between two stimuli, which are of two types called classic and operant conditioning. Classic conditioning is associated or associates a stimuli, that is maybe a marketing information, to a response, which is attitude, feeling, and behavior. Operant condition entails rewarding a desirable behavior, for example, offering a free sample of a product purchased. So you are given a reward. That's operant condition. So cognitive learning is more active and involves mental processes that acquires information to walk through problems and manage life's situation. All right. So learning is described as changes in individuals' behavior arising from experiences. It usually results from repeated experiences, response reasoning, and so on and so forth. So behavioral learning is the process of developing automatic response to a situation built up through repeated exposure to it. The variables that are central to how consumers learn from repeated learning experiences include one, drive. And what is your drive? Drive is the need to move an individual to action. For example, hunger is a drive. Thirst is a drive. Emotions, some kind of emotions are drives. So one of it is drive. Number two is a cue. Cue is a symbol that is perceived by a consumer. And some colors can be a cue, kind of words, behaviors can be a cue. Number three is response. Response is the action taken by a consumer to satisfy the drive. And then we have reinforcement. Reinforcement is referred to as reward received from taking action. Now let's discuss personality as it concerns making decision making process. That is bias psychology and decision making process. We have, in the course of studying consumer behavior, mentioned the word motivation, theories of motivation, and so on and so forth in the past. Motivation serves as the energizing force that makes consumer behavior to be purposeful, while personality guides and directs consumer behavior. So personality is another very important determinant which influences consumers' consumption pattern. A consumer will always want to use the product that matches his or her personality. Motivation and personality are closely related and are used to explain why people do some things and not others. So, motivation is described as the energizing force which stimulates behaviors to satisfy a need, while personality refers to a person's consistent behavior consistent behavior or response to recurring situations. Okay, so the key traits are enduring characteristics within a person or in his or her relationship with others. The most common trait identified are assertiveness. Some people are more assertive than others. Extroversion, that is, some people are more externally responsive, that is, they are extroverted, they are more responsive than others. Then we have compliance. Some people are more compliant than others. Some dominance, some dominate in their personality, and some are more aggressive than others. So personality trait theories have two basic assumptions, which include each person has a set of consistent, enduring personal characteristics, and two, those characteristics can be measured to identify different differences between individuals. So these core traits often lead to outward characteristics which are noticed by people, and people now tell you that you are extroverted, you are introverted, and so on, because they notice them and they know the difference by citing them between two individuals. Now, personality characteristics often reveals a person's self-concept, which is the way people see themselves, the way they perceive others, as the way they perceive others seeing them also. So that all put together is what we refer to as self-concept, how you see yourself, which is a completion or it's a accumulation of how people see you and how you see yourself. So the way people see themselves I refer to as actual self, while the way other people see them is the ideal self. So marketers recognize these two self images, and this is reflected in the type of product or brand offering to such a consumer. It has been reported also that consumers purchase brands that have a personality that is consistent with their own. So if they relate your brand to themselves and their individual perception or personality, they tend to buy such a product. There are five brands personality identified, which include sincerity, excitement, competence, sophistication, ruggedness. The knowledge of a brand's personality helps marketers to connect their brand to a consumer. Okay, so most well-known brands have a strong association with particular traits. For example, you see a car, maybe the one they refer to as a Jeep car, they are known for their ruggedness. So those people that think they are rugged tend to buy it. You see, they associate the personality of such product to themselves. You have phones, the Apple phones, you have different kinds of phones, and each one to the consumer, the average consumer, has a personality which they ascribe to it. So some they say it is too soft, some they say this one is more aggressive. And if a person thinks himself to be aggressive, he goes for such a product. All right, thank you for listening. I look forward to seeing you in a subsequent session. If you have not subscribed to my channel, please do that. If you've done that, that's nice. Like our videos, share them, and take time to click on the notification button so that when we share another video, you will get to know. All right, thank you for listening.